Babe. 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 The hills are alive with the sound of music. Oh, yeah. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, man. I do not want to do that. Test more settings. Automatically hide test bar. We need more real estate. Excellent. Oh, need to plug in my space pilot. Because it's about that time again, ladies and gentlemen. Time for us to shine. Plugged in, powered up. Oh, fishy, fishy, fishy. Oh. So what we got tonight, kids? Oh, that's right. Damn it. We have got to turn this off. We have got to turn that off. Did we do anything else? Let me see here. We just did. Ooh, we did do the bass, didn't we? We sure did. Dang it. We're going to have to do that over again. Crap. Oh well. Oh well. Save this as a new file. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is time again to save a new file. I need to go over to Instagram real quickly. Let them know that I am broadcasting live. Uno momento. Instagram. Add the picture. Mondays and Wednesdays. How do you do a text? I do not want to just... That's fine. Next. I want to type something. There we go. We are live once again, ladies and gentlemen. Spelling is key. $3D test print. Yeah, we're going to probably test out the new printer on Wednesday, because we now have a couple of models that are pretty close to being printed off, which is fantastic, if you ask me. We're going to send this to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, the mailman, Mother Goose. There we go. We are live. Come on over for a gander. What is the website? www.twitch.tv/. slash simple polytricks. Polytricks. Can't even spell my own thing. And we are shared, good to go, live, and in charge. Here we go. So, bad news. We kind of screwed up. At last we left off, it was a disaster. We went in there and put the bark on, which was great, but then we forgot to add a little dimple that sticks out of the base so that it fits onto the main base of the environment that's going to be sitting on the battle map. And what happened was we had turned on Turbo Smooth to make the bark, which is great. But the problem is we forgot about putting this little peg thing on first, and it works to putting little additions onto models before you add Turbo Smooth. The fewer polys that you have like it is right now, the easier you can add on extra things. And unfortunately, I had to save it as a new file. I had to delete the edit mesh, the edit poly up here that was our bark. I'm going to have to go in and add another edit poly, but this time we're going to add it underneath the Turbo Smooth because in this case we're going to be adding the peg, not the bark. The other edit poly will go above the Turbo Smooth because we want to have high definition, thousands of polys on here so that when we push out the little individual pieces of bark, we can easily do that. Right now we've only got, as you can see, a couple of polys here and there. Bringing this one poly out will be really rigid. It's not going to look very good. It's better to do it after the Turbo Smooth, which means that this has to come on and then the editable poly has to come up above it so that the mesh will be high polyed with this turned on, and then we can edit it. But right now we want to do it before, because see how few polys, how simplified this base is, and we turn on polys and then it goes, oh my god, what is going on here? So we need to turn that off. We have just this one editable poly turned on. It has right now absolutely nothing commanded in this editable poly. We can do literally everything to it, and then we can turn it on and off. One of the things we want to do is we want to get this piece here to have a cylindrical male end that sticks down so that we can adjust it later so it fits into the hole. And it's very, very simple now that it's low poly. This is one single poly right now. And you can click on it, and that's all it is. It's one poly. And which is nice because we are going to use bevel. And when you do bevel, it gives you two options. And you can just move this bad boy right over here so we can worry about that in a second. We get, auto saving, 1 second. Okay, the bottom number down here is your outline. And what that essentially does is it either expands your edge outward or it can go the other way, which is where we're wanting to go. And basically we are eyeballing this. Now, we want this to come in to a certain point, and then we're going to use the second one up here, which is the height, and that will adjust it and bring it down. But we got a little bit of a problem here. And that problem is that all of these pieces are pretty well in a big, kind of a circle. But you see this little spot right here? That little area causes this nice, pretty circle to kind of flatten out at the bottom. So if this was a nice circle, and the reason why it's flat like that is because of this root here, this blasted root, does not follow the curve quite as well as we would liked. And that's kind of a shame that's like that, because I'm pretty sure I kept that root to being, I didn't think I touched any of that area. This base should have stayed perfectly circle, but I guess I moved some some vertices right there, and you can see that it's just not quite rounded. It's kind of flattened. We can go in there and move those vertices to make it a little more rounded, but you're not going to be perfect. It's going to be a little off, and the whole goal is to get this circle to be perfectly circle. The reason that you want this piece here to be circled is because it'll be easier to find its perfect match on the base that this thing fits onto. If you have this irregular shape here, you're going to have to make an irregular shape on your base so that it fits well. If you make just a cylinder cutout on your base and then this thing slides in, then you're going to have this little gap here that may or may not be an effective thing, but it's not going to be a very well fitted piece. And so there might be a little rattling. It may move just a little bit if you bump into it. It's just not going to look very good. So that was just to show you what we could do if we did it right to begin with. We didn't, so we got to do it the hard way. So we got to cancel here so we get back into that thing. And we're going to have to basically, we're going to have to try how we kind of did it the last time. And that was to make a spline, which is just a line, no geometry, around that circumference, and then make another additional circle inside it and kind of fuse it together. So let's start and try that. We're going to have to delete that piece there. And again, no panic here because we just turn off that edit poly modifier and it comes right back. So it's not like it's going anywhere. We're going to go to border. That way we can pick this edge here, and I want all of that. I want every single edge along the very base of this thing. And then we're going to go to over here to the right. We're going to click Create Shape. I've never clicked the settings, but we're going to do it this time. It just gives you an option whether to do it smooth or linear. Now, if my memory corrects, it doesn't fail me, which it does a lot. The smooth, what it will do is it will take. You see how this is essentially a series of straight lines. This to here, this to here, this to here, etc. That's how polygons are made. There's no curves in polygons. It's a series of straight edges that you make enough of them, and they look circular. They look rounded. But in reality, it's just straight edges versus straight edges at a different angle. So if you click on this smooth thing, what it's going to do is going to make this whole edge here, and it's going to smooth that ridgeness. So instead of having this sharp corner that you can see right there, it's going to smooth that bad boy out. And that might be great in another situation, but we're needing this thing to be spot on, snap on, perfect onto the base of here. We need it to be exactly the same shape, including the ridgeness. So we're going to go to linear. Let me click on OK, and now it follows. That blue line that had just appeared follows along the edges of that base there. If we go in here and deselect everything by just clicking on the top of Edit Poly, click at the very top, and then we go over here and click on this blue line, it'll turn yellow. That tells you that you've got the right item. Excuse me. Then you click on that, and you go to Isolate by right-clicking anywhere on the screen, anywhere with it selected. Go up to Isolate Selection. And now you got this bad boy. Now, one of the problems that we had earlier is that when this thing turns into a mesh, right now it's an edible spline. And so if we go to the spline and we go to the vertex, it has all of these dots. They're all vertices. But what we need to do is, real quickly, I want to show you what I'm talking about. The importance is here. We're going to, I right-clicked, went to End, Isolate. I'm going to show where we go to Vertex, we're going to make sure that the vertexes are exactly where each edge intersection is. And that's where these are, each one of these. And that way, if we moved this whole spline off of the base, and we turn snap on by pushing S, and we came to one here. This is basically two splines right here fusing together. That's why this thing pops up right there. You can either do midway point, which is in between a spline. You can clearly see it's in between the line, or you can do it at the intersection. We're looking for the intersection, but if we make that box, that yellow box, and we click and drag it until we see a box that appears right where we left off, you see how it perfectly snaps back onto place? That's the importance of keeping the number of segments equal to the number of segments up here so that it cleanly snaps back on. And when we reattach it in a next step, it won't have any problems with it. So let's go back to isolate. And we got this nice little fancy thing here. Now, what we need to do is go to T for top, turn off for spline. Now, if this was a perfect circle, one of the tools you can go to is over here on the right called outline. And that does very similar to what that bevel tool did earlier for the polygon. It will create an outer or inner piece. But just like we did earlier, we see when we do that, we get the same exact unevenness on that one edge. We can't use it. So we want to hit undo, which is Control Z. So what instead we want to do is we want to go up to the very top, up here on the right of your modify panel. The left furthest one is create. This is where everything is built. You got your geometry in the first tab, and the second tab is your splines. So the first tab is where you get the physical 3D models, geometric shapes. The second model is the splines, which much like we have right here. We want a circle because we want a perfect circle. Now, here's one way you can do it that makes it really easy. Because we have it because this piece here is so perfect that we can snap it back at any time very easily into the base of the tree, we can move this freely to another point in our scene without having to worry about having difficulty snapping it back. And how I always emphasize, when you're working on stuff, you right-click on the Move tool, and you center this by right-clicking the arrows so that it's back to 0. We want it to be at the absolute origin again, because we're going to be building a circle within this thing. And we want the circle to be perfectly centered within it. You can use the Align tool to center it if you want, but why do it when you can just do this way? So basically, you click on the Circle tool. And you can do one of two things. You can actually do a keyboard entry point. If you want to. There's a keyboard entry that's usually minimized. You don't get to use this very often, but you can if you want to. It's XYZ. It basically tells you exactly where you want to place it. If you know it's exactly 50 millimeters off 0, you can actually type in 50, and when you click on create, it'll move and it'll create a new circle 50 millimeters off of 0. Well, we don't. We want it to be perfectly 0 because that's where this thing is, right? So all we need to do is we need to figure out what radius it is. And really, it doesn't matter because we're going to adjust the radius once we make it. So all we need to do is just put in, I don't know, 20. That's probably going to be way too much, but who knows? And then you click on create. There we go. It makes a circle. The circle is the one on not this one, but it's this one. Okay, so it made it within the parameters of the inner circle or the outer circle. Go over to your modifier tab. We've gone here before many times. It's the second tab. First tab is create, second tab is modifier. This is where we modify the object. But since we got this nice smooth surface, there is one issue that we have, and that is the auto-saving. Please wait. Processing. Okay. The issue is on this circle, this is the outer circle. This is the one that matches our, yeah, it's really bumpy. Thank you. It's specifically bumpy because the tree that we're going to be attaching to still has its roughness to it. If we were showing it earlier that the tree needs to keep off, I'll show you. The tree is still rough. We're going to be adding a turbo smooth later. Right now, we're going to be just adding this little section here. So it needs to stay rough because, as I mentioned earlier, the number of edges, the number of those vertices, those little dots, need to match exactly the number of intersections all around here. So this thing will snap perfectly back onto the base of this. So it's really important that we keep it that way. Let's go back to isolate, hit T for the top, and go back to what we were doing. So this is our circle. This is our, essentially our outer outline of the tree. And it's actually pretty important that we can actually like call it tree, and then we'll call this, I don't know, dimple, whatever. It's important that this number of vertices match the number of each one of, well, let's change this to editable spline over here and go to vertices. These vertices need to match the same number of vertices in that circle. Why? Because in Max, it's going to basically, when we combine these two together, yeah, it kind of looks like that. Not really. It's going to basically take one of these, each one of these vertices, and it's going to shoot a line to the nearest vertice on the outer circle, because it wants to connect edge to edge, intersection to intersection. It's a complete circle like that. And if there's only like 12 of these little edges right here, but there's like 40 of these things, it won't have enough. These things will run out of mates to connect to. So how do we do this? Very carefully. You go to vertice, you select all of them. Then you look over here on your right side on your panel here, and down here towards the bottom, right here, it says 48 vertices selected. That's how many vertices I have on that circle. That's how many we need in order for it to snap to the tree. So, what do we do with this? Well, I'm going to remove this edit spline real quick and go down to interpolation, and we're going to make it so that right now, turn off to optimize, because we don't want it to be optimized. We don't want it to smooth itself out. We don't want it to make it better or optimize. We need it to be rough, like the inner circle. Turn that off. And right now, if we crank the numbers up, we can see that that circle gets smoother. Do you see that? If we crank the numbers down, it gets rougher. So, the best way we can do this is, and we're going to have to do it the hard way. All right, so we know its number is 48 is the goal. We can add vertices to this circle, and it's a little bit easier to do that mathematically without having to do a whole bunch of calculations. So we need to do it in increments of, 12, because 4 and 12 is 48. So what we can do is, we got right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I believe this is the count. So 16 is what we've got here on the numbers, and that's not quite the number we want. Let's try this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Now we have 12 edges, which is what we want. Now we go into and add an editable spline, because we're going to add 4 times the vertices to this through this editable spline. And by doing that, you drop down the arrow so you can get access to the sub-objects underneath it, vertices, segment, and whatnot. We want to go to segment. I want to select everything. Now, in the past, sometimes this does not work as well, but sometimes it does. And basically what we have is, it's kind of squirrely, because even though we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12 edges, we only have 4 vertices. You see that? That's what kind of sucks. We need to have more than that. So what we're going to do is, we're going to see if we can't divide this. I think it may be I think 12 actually works in this case, because it's going to go 12 into between each vertice. So it'll be 12, 12, 12, and 12, which would actually be 48, plus the 4 that are existing vertices would be 52, so that's not quite the number. So we subtract 4 from it, which is 8. So theoretically, it would go 8, 8, 8, and 8. 8 times 4, 32, plus 4 is 36. Still not doing the math right. So let's try that again. We need 48, so that's 4. 4 is 8, is 16, and then double that is 32 plus 4. Yeah, that's not going to look good. But we're going to try it anyway. We'll see what happens. All right. Whatever. So now we got, counting the ones at the cardinal directions, we got in between each cardinal direction, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's 8, and 8, and 8, and 8, which is the 32, plus the 4 in the cardinal direction, which is 36. That means we're lacking 12 right there. So we could back up here and try 10. I think that's going to be wrong, though. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is what we want. So that's 40. 10, 10, 10, and 10. Plus the 4 is 44. Womp womp. Didn't quite get the number we wanted. So maybe it is 12, because, or maybe it's 11 actually. Because if we do 11, then we go 11 here, 11 here, 11 here, and 11 here. That's 44, 45, 46, 47, and 48. So now we've got the 48 there. Just went through all that just to show that you sometimes have to just kind of experiment. If you're really good at math, you'll just jump right in there and do it exactly. It's 11 because 11 44 is 44 plus 4 is 48. I don't even care. I just want to play this thing. So we've got 48 pieces. We can now attach the two pieces together and they should be all right. But first, this piece is outside this piece. We need this piece to be inside as a small, because remember, it's good. This outer piece is supposed to be in the inside. It's supposed to be a little peg that sticks downward into the ground. So what we do, very simply, go down to spline, select it so it selects all. You can do one of two things. You can either go up here to the scale, up here at your top in your main menu up here. You click on scale and you can just scale it down to this and you're good to go. It's fine. Alternatively, you can use the outline feature, which is what we talked about earlier. It's over on the right in the middle of your modifier panel. It's right here. And we do the same thing and we go up to make it smaller. Does the exact same thing, and then you can go in and delete your outer ring and you've just got the inner ring. Simple enough. It's the same thing. It does the exact same thing. We're good to go. All right. Let's double check before we attach these things by hitting F and hitting Z. Z is zoom. It'll zoom on pretty much your whole scene. But we're basically just trying to make sure, P for perspective, just to make sure it's on the same line. If this circle, this inner circle, was above or below this outer circle, when we connect it, it's going to look really stupid. It's got to be perfectly on the same plane before you do that. So we just pick either one of them. It doesn't matter. You can pick the inner circle, the outer circle. It's irrelevant. And you're going to click on attached. It's over in the right column of the modify panel, way up here. You want to just click on attach and then move your cursor so that you can see those three circles again. We've done this before where we added splines together. You just basically make sure that it even pops up the word dimple there. You see that? It identifies the name of what that object is, so you know you're clicking on the right one, and you click it and it's done. It's one piece now. Detach or deselect your attach button so you're not adding any more things, and you can actually click on spline and you can see that I can click on both objects. It's one piece now. It is saving way too often. So let's change this auto saving. We go to customize, preference, files. Yeah, right here it defaults. It's backing up intervals. Every 5 minutes it's saving a file. We don't need that. Make it 15. You can even make it 20 if you're bold enough, but 15 is usually pretty good. Save it. That way it's going to auto back every 15 minutes. Maya doesn't do that. Blender, I think, does. Some of them don't do it, and it's stupid because your auto back is your friend, and it'll save your butt too many times. But you don't want it saving every 5 minutes because that's really annoying. All right, now that we got this thing ready to go, let's hit P to get back into perspective. We can turn off our isolate mode by right-clicking and then going to end isolate. And just like that. We can move the X back over, get it in the proximity of where it was. And now, because we have this thing, this outer shell, this circle, exactly the same as it was to fit this one, you can grab anywhere, not necessarily in the middle, although you can, but try to get it where it's in between two segments. And you click and drag this thing with snap on, so you're going to have to hit the S button. And then you basically see how it's a little bit off there. You just kind of move it around till you find that perfect match. And you just look and see, yeah, that's snapped. Like that. And now it's back safely back to where it was. And now, at this point, we cross our fingers because we don't know if it's actually going to work or not, but we're going to give it a shot. First thing we need to do, you cannot attach a polygon, which is what this is up here, geometry, to a spline. It doesn't like it. They don't like the two. What it will do, typically, it'll try to force the spline into being an editable mesh, much like what this tree is. Generally speaking, I will try to convert the spline to a mesh first, and then I will connect everything the way I need to be. So in order to do that, right now it's a spline. Do one of two ways. You can either add an edible poly on top of it, and that makes it solid like this bad boy. Alternatively, you can delete that. You can right click and go to edible poly right here. The difference is one collapses it into an edible poly. What I just did is a permanent move. It cannot be changed back to an edible spline. If I add an edible poly modifier, which I did earlier, you can delete that modifier and revert it back to the spline. It has a go back button. I have no care about going back to spline because at this point we're going to be combining it with this mesh, so it doesn't need to be a spline anymore. Now, we learned from last time, I explained how attaching is really important on the way you do it. If you attach it, I'll repeat this because it's really important. If you take this new piece and go over into your modifier panel and you go to this attach button right here, if you click attach and you click on this tree, your modifier list up here for the tree, which is all of this, edible poly, a turbo smooth, a cylinder, all of that will go away forever. It will be adapted to whatever edible mesh or modifier, whatever is in this stack for this object that you click attach first. The first object you click on, it will take all of that and make this adapt to it. And that sucks because you've lost all of this is your big baby. This has all your work in it. And in case you need to go back like we did this little while ago, you want to be able to have that capability. So you always want to take the part that you want to keep editable and edit and attach the object to the main body. So we're going to drop back down to edit poly, which is what we did earlier, remember that removed the base. And in that same motion, we are going to attach the object, and you'll see it like yellow highlighted, select knowing that you got the right one, and it's attached. Right click to deselect the attach button, or detach that attach button, so it's not turned on, so you don't accidentally attach anything else. This looks like it's attached, but it's not. If you click on poly and move it down, it's still disconnected, but it is a part of the same object. Meaning if you close down that to edible poly, if you don't click on any of these, if you click on edit poly so it's the main thing, or click on turbo smooth, yeah, make sure you do your virus protection, boys and girls. And move the X, it's one piece. See? What happened? Well, attach literally just combines the object, but it doesn't fuse it. It doesn't make it one piece. It leaves them independent of each other. So what we got to do? Yeah, the boring stuff. weld vertices. But the nice thing is we should be able to cheat here, hopefully, and go to your F for front, Z to zoom out. And what we're going to be doing here is kind of a pain in the butt. There's a lot of vertices right there. I was going to originally just kind of scroll select or drag select over all those vertices, but you're going to be selecting, if you hit P again, you'll be selecting vertices you don't want to be selected. Because all we want to do is select the vertices around this circumference that are not welded. So what we're going to do is just push F3 to go to wireframe, and we're just going to hold down Control, and we're going to drag select just the area. Ooh, man, we got to make sure we do this right. There we go. There we go. Just that bottommost layer. Don't select anything else. Make sure that you don't select anything else. Just select the bottom row, including this. Every single vertex you see, and you're wanting to drag click. Do not click it. If you click one of these vertices, that means you're clicking the vertex that is part of either the base or the tree, but you're not. There's two vertices right here I clicked on. I want to always hold down Control and always drag. That way I got both the vertices, because it looks like there's only one right there, right? But there's actually two. And we can actually see that by looking over here and keeping an eye on our right modifier panel. There's a number of 62 vertices selected. I've had 62 of them selected. Keep an eye on that as I select this next one. It should go to 64, and it did, because there's two vertices right there. So you want to always make sure that you're grabbing all the vertices that you want and not clicking too much if you can avoid it. Plus, you can sometimes select a lot more. Like here, you can go big right across there, and you got all of them. Now I've got all of the ones that I want. There are 96 vertices selected. We are going to click the weld button, which is just below the 96 button. Theoretically, it should go in half. It should split the thing in half from 96 to whatever half 96 is. 45 and 45 is 90, then 3, so 48, I believe. So theoretically it'll be 48, but there may be some other multiple vertices on here. We'll find out. 72, not even close to the one I was predicting. Awesome. Which makes me kind of wonder if I got all of them correct or not. Let's find out. Go over to Poly to find out. Hit F3 so you can actually see it. We still have the bottom selected, and we're going to pull it down. Yep. See what happened? We got an issue. We got a problem. And that problem is, for some reason, this vertex, even though we have this one up here selected, they did not weld. And that's kind of a bad thing. Well, we hit Control Z to get back to it. Now we already welded these, so like some of them were welded. So if we keep an eye on this, vertex 1402 is selected. So we know that's the single one, but it's this one, it's every other one that's selected. And if we click on that and go to weld, nothing's happening. Usually that means that you basically, if there's another, basically like this seems to be fine, but if there is like a hidden, if this segment here, if there's another segment on top of it, for instance, you can't see, or if there's another polygon, for instance, if I delete this one, that there wasn't anything there, but when I selected it, kind of looked like there was one behind it. Sometimes there's objects that are on top of each other, and you can't fuse more than, I want to say 4. Yeah, you can't really do more than about 4 or 5 polygons without having some issues. So what we're going to do here is go into edges. I'm going to go F3 and select all that. I should have 3 vertices or 3 edges, and this is my point here. So I just drag clicked. You have one segment here, one segment or an edge, one segment right here behind the blue Z button. Okay, I should have 3 selected. Check it out over here. I got 5. I got 5. And the reason is, if you just select this one, that's just one edge. It's these that are double-edged. And the reason is because there is an edge from this base that made this edge of this shape, and then there's an edge of this building, of this piece here, right up against it. And you can weld one side of it, but you can't do the other side, because if it welded this piece too, then all of a sudden it would have these weird 2 edges right here that it doesn't know what to do with. So what can you do? Well, it's kind of stupid, but first thing comes to mind is you delete that polygon. And why do you do that? Because that polygon had an edge on the base, and now you select it, and of course you just have one edge now. It's just this base here. So if you go in there, if I can get the thing to not make everybody sick, I can go and select this. You can see if this will weld. It does not still, because the next one over has 2 edges. So we can try to do that. And then, now that we've got this little gap here, we need to make a poly and see if it will. We can actually just create polys within the actual object. Go down to poly, and to the right of it, right next to that attach button we pushed earlier, click on create. You can either use your snap tool, we've done this before, or you can just do it without. The snap tool actually makes it a little bit easier. You're just going to be going click, 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 click. You're going to click every single vertex in a rectangle to make. You're just outlining where you want the polygon to be created. You can also untap it, unsnap, and you can see the cursor changes to a true crosshair. And you can just move it over from that to that, that to that, if you wanted to. Doesn't matter. But we're just going to go all the way around. And it did not work. Nice. Sweet. Did it work on the inside? It sure didn't. Well, time to do a little brainstorm and see what's the deal here. That's 2 edges there. That's an edge there. Why did it do that? Let's try that one more time. Sure didn't. Sure did not work. Fascinating. Well, I'm wondering if it's because this base here is causing the issue. Now, one thing we can do is actually ignore that for a second and make our base. Let's do that real quick. We're going to make this little peg thing real quick, and I'll show you the reason why, because I've got an idea. So we can either extrude, which is over here. You want to click on the settings. The top number is the height, and you just bring that negative, and that brings it down. You don't have to worry about the measurement for now. You can put 7 if you want, doesn't matter. We'll worry about the depth later. Click on OK, make sure that checkbox is clicked, and that confirms that. And then with the same thing selected, to the right of that extrude button is the cap button. You want to click that, and it seals the thing off. Pretty simple. Now you got a sealed peg, which is really cool. I mean, this is pretty much what we want. Problem is this base part here is still not selected to the main piece. It needs to be one piece, or the printer does not like it. So what we can do, theoretically, because we've got the same number of edges around this right here as this edge, because we did the numbers, we can theoretically delete that poly. We can go back in here, and we need to remake this little segment here real quick. See if we can make it now. I bet we can. Bop, 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 bop. Oh, that's right. There's nothing down there now. Oops. We just keep on making one big poly. Like that. This is kind of a hodgepodge way of doing it, but it's an easy way of doing it. You can do the cut. We're going to make a cut right between here if we can. Let's see if it actually works. Cut, cut. Well, it seemed to work. And then, no, we definitely don't want to do this because now we've got, now we need desperately to keep this vertice right here the same exact placement that it was when this thing came down to begin with, and this was one piece, because otherwise the ring would not line up very well. So let's nix that. And what we can do instead is take an edge. We can grab this edge, and we can turn off snap with S. Hold down Shift and pull down on the Z button, and that will bring down a new poly. Now, keeping that same poly or that edge selected, turn on both your snap, and I usually hit the space bar, which is a new kind of tool. It means it locks it in place. It locks my current tool that I have selected. So if I have this edge selected, I cannot deselect it. It's impossible. If I click anywhere, it cannot deselect it. Now I like to do that because it keeps me from accidentally clicking other things. And that's a space bar, and that'll lock that in. And I just basically move that over and snap it. Now, theoretically, this spot right here should be exactly where that vertex, that edge, that corner was originally before we deleted these two polys. We can do the same thing. We're going to do that again, just so you can see that. Hold down Shift, pull down Z. Z is dead, and then snap. Oops, looks like it's not going to work. Snap to that. Yep, it doesn't look like that was right, because we snapped it and it moved a little bit to the side there. Now we could go in there in the vertices and just select those two vertices and click weld, and that probably does it just fine, because that's going to weld exactly in the middle of those two pieces. We click the weld button over there, and that's probably going to be okay, because that vertice should be exactly where it was to begin with. So now we've got our restoration of that. So now what we need to do is we need to click on border and get back to this edge here. Oops, we do not like this. When we click on border, we don't want to see these little pieces that jut up. Why? Because that means it's not an enclosed complete border. There's something that's causing it to think that the border actually, this base, goes up and back down and continues on. Usually that means something wrong here. F3, we'll look at this. Same as one vertex. It usually means there's two vertices. There it is. Okay. Yeah, it didn't weld it. Let me see if I can try welding again. It did. Okay, so that time it did. Let me check and make sure the surrounding areas have all the vertices. They did. So there was two vertices right there that just didn't get welded like they were supposed to. Now they are. Once you click on border, you deselect, click it again. Now that's gone. That little piece is gone there. It recognizes that it's a complete enclosure. We circle through it around. You can see that it's just along the base there, that circle. And now we're going to select this. You want to hit Control, hold down Control to do this, and click this top edge right up there. That way we have that edge. And oop, it did it again. I'll be. Let's check the got to autosave real quick. Let's check the vertice. Sure enough, multiple vertices. Click weld. I thought we just checked this and deselect and select it. I'm pretty sure that did not show up a second ago, and now it did. It's like weird. Now you guys are proof. It looks fine. All right, let's go back in here. Control click to get that inner piece. Now I'm going to double check that just to make sure it didn't like suddenly appear again. No, it didn't look like it. Looks like it's still fine. Just as long as it's along that base is all that matters. So we've got 2 edges selected. And because we did our calculations correctly, those edges on each circle that we have selected, despite the fact that one's tighter than the other, has the same number of segments, the same number of vertices. And therefore, if we try to bridge the gap, it should automatically have every vertice from here should find a match up here. So let's click the bridge down here on the modifier panel, do the settings, and it did not do a clean one at all. In fact, it did pretty ugly. This is just atrocious. You want them to be nice straight edges, granted at an angle, but it's looking like this thing did not have the same number of edges. And look how messy this is. It should have had this vertice right here should have gone up, and there's nothing that connects it, and instead this little rat nest here, and that took every single vertice and tried to find a match, but it didn't go in the right direction. We can try to zero out and try and change some of these methods by twisting things around. That's not doing much effort. That's not doing much there. Neither is that. I'm just experimenting right now and just see if anything does that. It doesn't look like it's doing anything other than just rotating it. Ooh, so that didn't work. And this one doesn't work, although it is very lovely. So what does that mean? It means for some reason the number of faces right here are way more than 48, and I can just look right now, that looks way more than 48. So somehow this thing multiplied itself. So let's go back to vertice, select it, and sure enough, we have 336 vertices, and we needed 48. So what do? We keep hashing this along until we get it right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take my polys, select all that, make sure I got all of it, not just some of it. Drag all that, just that piece. We're going to detach it. It's up here on the right here. And we're going to go in and isolate. We're going in and clicking that piece and isolating just that piece. Hit T for top. Go to the Creations tab. F3 so we can actually see just the circle. S to get the snap on. Switch it to edge, and then we're going to try and figure out why in the world this is not working. I want to get it as close as I can to that shape. So, but the problem is whenever you turn it into a mesh and you go to vertices, well, that worked just fine. But earlier it didn't, so we're going to try something else. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's actually 12 right there. That might actually work just on pure luck. Delete the other one because right now we really just don't need it. And so we got this little piece here. I'm going to have F3 so I can actually see what I'm doing. All right. Unfortunately, it is... Oh, that's right. It's a solid. We don't want that. Oh, we don't want that. We want it to be... Well, wait a minute. Maybe we can't do this. Let's go to poly. This is going to look weird, guys. Brace yourself. I'm going to extrude this thing downward. And you can either use the extrude button here, or you can just hold down shift and see if it works. That doesn't work because it needs to look like it's solid. Hold on. Does this thing work? That works. So extrude works a little bit better. So you're wanting to have that thing so it has nice edges here. Okay? And it went down, so we just, whatever. 5. Doesn't matter. We can adjust this later. The main thing is we need to make sure that we have the right number. And now we had 12 originally. Let's isolate this again. So we got 12 different vertices. We need 48. So we need to multiply these times 4. So if we go to top view, select everything, F for the bottom. Didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Let me do this real quick. Yeah, okay. So what I did was I hit F so I can see the side view. Select everything, and then I hold down Alt to deselect, and I deselect the middle. Because what we're going to do is because we've got 12 of these vertical segments, we need 48 of them. So we're going to use that connect tool that we've used in the past to split each one of these segments 4 times. And theoretically, if that's the case, then that'd make 48, I think. Theoretically. Or it may not. It may need to do 36. We're going to try it anyway. So we're just going to split these, and we don't want to split it. We don't want these selected, because what it'll do is it'll try to split these things this way. It'll basically connect them in this direction. So if we have them up here and down here, it basically slices it vertically from edge to edge, basically from what part is selected to what part is selected. It makes a slice in between. Go over and do the connect button. So now we're getting this selected, and if I'm not mistaken, it says 24 edges selected, so now we're at 24. So we're at 20, we're at 12, then that was another one, and another one. Oop, too many. So now we got 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 4 segments. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's 4 little edges, clusters, I guess. So that should be 48. So let's click on checkbox, and we'll know by dragging right across there to select all of those, and bada bing, bada boom, we got 48. Okay. Let's get rid of all of this nonsense by hitting F, dragging towards the bottom, Alt to select or to deselect the edges. So basically, we just want that bottom. So we're going to select it all the bottom, then use Alt to deselect the edges, so we just have this bottom. And get rid of that because we need this to be nice and clean. Go to your border. We've done this before. It's the cap tool. We select the base, so we just have that base because it's all about it. And then we click on the cap button over here, and it seals it. That's a nice, clean base. We don't have any extra polys or anything like that. All right, in the isolate mode, we're back in track. And now let's make sure we hit F3 and push F. You can see that the top of this cylinder is perfectly aligned with the bottom of the tree, which is what we want because we want this bridge to work. And we don't want it to come down. We want it to come straight inward. We need this whole base to be flat because it's going to sit. So now we repeat what we did. We go back into Edit Poly. We attach, just like we did a second ago, we attach the cylinder. We double check by selecting the edges and just going across there to make sure that we got 48 edges, which is right there. Still says 48. We're still good to go. We still got the same number. So now we go to border. Just like we did, it's all about the base, We click on the border right here so that we've got that edge. Control, left click on the top of this cylinder. You might have to move in there to grid it, but you just want the top. That way we got these two just like we did a second ago. Now we hold on to our butts because we're going to try the bridge again. And it did exactly not what we wanted once again because bridge kind of sucks. I don't have a whole lot of success with bridge. We can try some other things, but sometimes the idiot thing, I mean, look at this. It was working fine right here, but then it thinks, oh, wait a minute. There's a segment here. I'm just not even going to connect it to anything. But over here, it just, it doesn't even care what it wants to do. So what we're going to do is cancel that out. And I was pretty sure we had 48, but you know what? Now that I'm thinking of it, maybe we don't have 48 on these pieces. What I'm saying 48 is these. It may be that, and I'm not talking about over here. I'm just talking about just this circle here. Let's go in the middle and the inside again. I'm going to select these again. And that may be what my problem was to begin with, is that I'm just an idiot and didn't count properly. I was pretty sure it said 48. We make happy mistakes because the mistakes make us frustrated. Let's see here. I need to actually. Actually, all this these Twitches will actually go onto YouTube afterwards. So if you guys don't want to like stick around for the full, 2 hours or whatnot that we're going to go on tonight, you're more than welcome to wait. Usually 30 minutes after I finish the Twitch, I have the videos uploaded. And you can skip your way through the boring parts and get right to the juicy parts. And that would be the parts where I screw up horribly and you can laugh maniacally. All right, I selected all of them, and I was right. It says right there, 48 vertices selected. So I do have the right number on that. So I have 48 vertices selected. And if I select just the top there, I got 48 vertices selected. So I have them all ready to go. So just a stupid program doesn't want to be smart enough to take this vertice and match it to that. So a couple of the things you can do. I'm just going to go around and target weld. It's going to take me a few seconds. Just bear with me, but this is just one way we can do it. Before I do that, I'm going to grab the border of just. This may be the reason why it's having so much problems. Just this one. And because I know I'm going to be fusing it with that other one, I'm going to, let's see, extrude should do the trick. Yes. If you click the extrude button, what it does is it just sends all the polygons out in a fan formation, kind of like this. And I'm going to click on check marks to confirm that. And now I want to get all of these segments here to match with all of these bases. And I don't know why the stupid thing. I'm going to do it one more time because maybe Bridge will think differently now. Nope, it's not even close. It doesn't even have a clue what it wants to do. So now I'm just going to go ahead and just do it the old-fashioned boring way and just click on target weld over here with vertices selected, because we're going to start just targeting the crap out of this thing. And it doesn't matter what, but you just want to try to get as, oops, if I can get this run. Well, turn it back on because I had it deselected. And get the right angle so I can actually know what I'm doing here. Yep. Anybody sick yet? Good. Make sure this is still this one vertice, so I should be able to target weld this, and maybe this is the reason why it's having problems, because it's not wanting to do that. And I bet you it'll target the next one, but it won't target that one. Why is that? Well, I don't know. Because usually that does a pretty good trick right there. So we're going to back up a little bit. Control Z is your friend. And right there, we're going to try to snap this by the edge. It's probably because there's two segments there. Oops. Target. I just bring in everything together. Yeah, because there's two edges right there, and it doesn't like that. If I select edge and it says two edges. So that is a bit of a dilly-dally of an issue. And usually this is just basic stuff that is causing more problems tonight than it should, because I should have this thing ready to go by now. This stupid part here, it doesn't let me do that. Oh man, if I sit in at work, it'd work just fine. But this thing, it doesn't want to do that, and that's kind of a bummer because that should work just fine. So, what else are we going to do here then to cause that to work? You can't delete the edges because if you do that, it deletes the actual poly. Why is it not wanting to do that? Is it ooh, I hadn't thought of that. Okay, this may be a reason. All right, so school's in session for this one, boys and girls. I think I figured it out. So a polygon, this thing right here. In the world of 3D modeling, polygons are single-faced. In the real world, a sheet of glass has two faces. I mean, you look on one side of it, and you look, even though it's see-through, it's got two edges. You touch one side, you can touch the other. Even though I can see this side of the polygon, in 3D terms, this is essentially a two-way mirror, if you can imagine that. So in other words, it is looking, this face here, even though we're looking at it on the back side, this is the back of the front side. It does not have a back side per se. It has a front side. Let me show you what I mean. You can actually go over here, and there's a button over here on the right. It says flip. Watch the color. See how it turns dark? Now, if we go in the inside, see how that's bright again? The brighter side is the direction the polygon is facing. Right now, it is facing outward. And check this out. See how dark it is right there? See how light it is right there? It means that this whole top section here, including the inner side here, all of this is facing inward and upward. If we go on the bottom here, see how dark it is? If we go on the top, see how bright it is? It's because the polys are all facing upwards. When you're fusing vertices together, all polygons have to face the same way. If the polygons are facing outward in this direction and downward in that direction, this polygon cannot face upward into the bottle. Why? Because in real life, if we sealed this thing up where there's no hole in it, this polygon needs to be facing down to represent the base of it itself. So what we need to do, very simply, move in here so that we just see our piece that we added. Nothing more, just that, and we flip it. Bang! And I bet you $1,000 that not only would it work, but that stupid bridge would work. So I'm going to actually just go back. See if we can unz this. I don't know if we can. We've done a whole bunch of other things. We probably can't. Can we go down one more? Keep going. Ah, we ran out of undos. Oh well. I want to delete these pieces here. We're going to do this again. So we're going to remove the extrude because we really don't need to, because the bridge thing is going to actually do most of it. Deselect the base. We don't want those. Alt deselects everything. We just want that top piece. Delete it. Now, back to the original thing we've done like 3 times. Select the border. We know what we're doing. Select the border. Hold on to your butts. Please work. Some days is just like this, where you know it in your heart it's going to work this time, and it didn't. Why did it not work? Because we undid so far back we forgot to flip the polys. The problem was to begin with. So let's do that first. Then go back to border. Then go back to bridge. Dun 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 dun. It's a beautiful thing. Finally, the bridge worked. Finally, I made a little bit of sense on what I was doing. Oh my god, that took way too long, but sometimes your head just doesn't really want to work. And if we select poly and just select any of the pieces, move it around, you can see that it's all connected. It's all connected. Okay, well, that probably took up the whole time. Nope, it only took up half the time. All right, well, we sure as crap are going to save this, aren't we, boys and girls? Save as. And I don't want to save it on a cluster because that was just, that's, look at that. I saved it as 13. No wonder I had bad luck on it. Hit the plus button to the right of it. We're going to make it a new separate file. It moves up here from 13 to 14. We are on a new fresh file. And we pretty much have this thing wrapped up. The only thing we need to do is tighten this thing so that it's nice and tight when the turbo squid comes on, because right now it's kind of a, well, we all know what that looks like, but we're not going to talk about it. We're going to tighten this thing up. How we do that? Turn off turbo smooth. Turn on your edge. And actually we can turn on, yeah, we can turn on edge. That's fine. Select just these horizontal pieces because we're going to make a line all the way through this perfectly straight. Use the connect tool. That'll get you a cut. That'll get you, we just need one. Actually, we take that back. We need two. One for the top, one for the bottom. We'll show you what we mean. We need to get these lines as close to the edge up here and down here as possible without touching them. The closer we get, the tighter it is. This middle button, this middle section right here, separates and condenses the two lines together. We just move them all the way to the top, so it goes all the way, and then pull back just a bit. Get it around there. We can get it tighter if we want, doesn't matter. Just don't get it on the edge. Click on OK. And that might actually be enough. We'll go ahead and deselect Ed Poly, turn on Turbo Smooth. I don't like that. That's not tight enough. We need this thing to be nice and tight. It needs to be a sharp edge. So we need what we need. We need more edges. And to do that, we select Poly. Go here and select the bottom face. And we're going to try to use Inset, which is a new tool. And what that does is it insets a polygon within the polygon. And you want to hit the settings in this case and start rolling it in like this. Just drag that up there and it will, not that far, but bring it back in so it's nice and close to the edge. Like right here. You can put it tighter if you want, doesn't matter. Just don't get it on that edge. Click on OK. Deselect your poly modifier up here. Try turn it on your smooth and see what happens. And sure enough, now we got a nice crisp edge. It's because we have those two segments real pressed up tight to that. Now the problem is the top part still has a curve to it, a little right there. We don't like that. We want it to be nice and straight. Remember when we were kids? When we put that little square inside the hole cut out of the wooden toys that we used to have? Yeah, that's what we need. We need that nice clean edge. So let's go back. Click border. Select, what are we going to do? Oh yeah, not border, edge. And move upwards so that we can actually see just about everything below. Hit F3 so we can select everything. It'll be easier just to select everything. The main thing is what you want to do is get all these spokes that are coming out of the central point. Those are the ones you have to select. We're going to deselect everything else. Push F, hold down Alt, drag over just those segments on the bottom that you can see there. And now we have everything selected, but we got these problem right here. Now it might have been smarter to do these first because this wouldn't be here, but then you still have these. You don't want these to be selected because we're going to make a line right through this circle here. So basically we're going to make a circle right around here. But we don't want anything else selected. So what do? We zoom in on F, hold down Alt, get real close, but don't get that top part. Ignore that top part, just get the bottom, these bottom segments. And now we've got almost everything. F3 so we can see the wireframe. But we don't want these. Now, I'm just going to hold down Alt and just really quickly select all these. You can hit T if you want to, but it's kind of tough at this version. But you're just trying to go between the two spokes. Might be an easier way. So I always try to find ways of cutting corners, because when you're making objects and models and things like that, it's irrelevant how you did it. It's important of what the final result is. If you cut corners and you can still get the same result as a Disney animator that spent hours and hours of extra work, then who cares? You got your stuff done and you get pizza quicker. So now that we've got this all selected, now we do the connect button just like we did. And because we already had the settings very similar on the spoke part, on this little mail-in, the settings are all the same. It's still set at 92, and actually it's got two segments. So there's one up here, there's one right there. And then that's fine and good. We can actually keep it that way because we want this to be a sharp edge, this to be a sharp edge, because it's all the base. We want the base to be as flat as possible. So we click on OK. Deselect your editable poly, turn on your edit smooth, hit F4 to turn off things, and then go for a look. Now later after we did the turbo smooth, we flattened that base out a little bit more. We'll do that here in a second. But for now, we're okay, because that thing looks pretty sharp on the edge, and it looks pretty sharp overall. There's not much of a curve there where it bends there. That's fine. That's what we want. Nice sharp poke right there. We'll save this one. We can save override. We can override that file that we just made. It's okay. Now the boring part. Repeat of what we did the last session. Hit F4. We're going to make the bark real quick, and then we're going to call this tree done done. Done done done. The way we do that is after the turbo smooth is turned on, we add the edit poly on top of the smooth. Remember me saying it's important to put it on top, not below, because we want the turbo smooth on, and that way we have a lot more polys to make the bark so that the bark is smaller pieces and smoother and things like that. It'll look prettier. We did that paint deformation. Remember that from last time? We select the poly, and then over here there's this minimized paint deformation. It's the very last thing in your edit poly modifier list. It's way down here. Unfortunately, let's see. Oh, I might actually still have my settings still saved. That's pretty slick if it is. It looks familiar. I think that's wrong, though. That seems like it's way too big. We activate it by pushing the push-pull button. Oh, yeah, that's way too big. The bark is really big there. I want to say the brush size was 2. Nope. It's less than that. 1. Seems like it was less than that too. I wonder why that's the size there. Ain't nothing on here but smooth. And I want to say it was 5. Man, I think so. Let's test it out. Yeah, that's close enough. Alright, so I had 5, 1, and 0.5, and I just guessed. I just make these settings up and I test it out to see if I like it. And then I just make a little line down there and make sure that I like the looks of it. Now, if it's too rough, this is kind of the point of no return. We can put another turbo smooth on this thing, but there's a chance that if we do, on top of another turbo smooth, it's not going to like it. So before we get too crazy, want to turn that off, want to go back to turbo smooth. It may come up with a warning like this and say, hey, you did something on a modifier above where you're trying to go to. I'm trying to go down to turbo smooth. And I did something on this edit poly above it. It will say this. It basically says, if you do anything to the modifier below, it is going to royally screw up your model because it is going to apply your changes. It's going to try its best to apply its changes up here onto the model after you make changes down below, and it's just not going to make any sense. Typically, I just know that's going to happen, this not to touch anything down below. You can leave this up if you want. You can check it. Do not show this message again. And basically saying, yes, I want to continue. And all I'm going to be doing is cranking this thing up to 4. I want one more segment. Adding more polys. Go back to edit poly, turn this thing back on. This is going to be, see what happens? See what happens? See what you did? Look what you did. This is not happy. This happened because it had an extra billion polygons just added to it, and it doesn't know that little bump out that I made. It doesn't know how to apply to it because there's more polys now than it did. So what do? We just delete it, add another poly. Brace for impact, because this is the part where your computer goes, I don't want to do this, and you're saying do it anyway, because you're really cranking out, like all your memory is being used, your processor is going to be used. Have everything shut down. Don't have Photoshop open when you're using this thing, because it's not going to like it. I mean, if I've got 16 gigs of RAM in this thing, and I've got a, I don't know, Xeon processor in there, it's not very great. It's an i7. It's not that great of a speed, but it does its job. But yeah, you don't want to have a Pentium 2 on this thing and try to pull this thing off, because it's not going to like it. It's not going to talk to you for years. What did I just do? I just accidentally moved things down when I wasn't supposed to, and now that was not good. I just moved that poly on accident, so let's back up. Turn on, man, this is slow. Turn on your push-pull first. I had it set it at 1. 1.5. Man, this is really getting slow. Have it at 2? I think I had 2, didn't I? It seems awful big. We'll do 1. I said the numbers wrong last time, but who cares? All right, let's see what happens. I'm going to go down here, and I just let go of the mouse, and we're seeing if it actually did anything or if it's going to crash. Boy, it sure didn't act like it did anything. Let's try it again. Let's turn it on. Oh, it doesn't even want to do anything. Really, when it's red like this, that means it doesn't like you. It needs to be green. And for some reason, it's not doing that. I don't know why. It doesn't like to do this. And it may just be because there's too many daggum polys in the scene. Let me make it bigger. Let's see if that does anything. Nope, it just doesn't want to do anything for you. Let me see here. Boy, it does not like you at all. Well, then we do the other way around. We delete that. We drop it back down to 3. And we're going to have to add the Turbo Smooth after as well. I don't like doing that, but we're going to have to do it. So we drop down to 3, which means it's not as dynamic as I want it to be, but that's all right. Turn on push pull. Get our numbers back. 1.5, something like that. What is going on? It does not want to do anything now. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, that's weird. Okay, now it suddenly wants to do that. Even though it was red a second ago, now it's green. It's happy. But it's not sticking out near far enough. So we need it to be a lot more. Let's go with 1. That's still not enough. We need to keep in mind this is going to be printed out. So it needs to be, oh, brush size 1 is all you can do. Let's try 2 up here. There we go. All right, that's a nice clean piece of bark right there if I've ever seen it. Now we just got to go around and like I said, like we did last time, you just don't worry about being straight. You just want to keep off that bottom edge because we want this to be nice and flat. Don't worry about size and depth. Vary your sizes, vary your age, your direction. They generally bark goes up and down, but sometimes it goes to the side a little bit. Don't forget to do this section. I'm going to leave this bare piece alone because it's kind of a bare, smoothed area. I'm just going to put these little, looks like little worms. Pretty simple. Little bumps. Bump, 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 bump. The main thing is to keep this nice and tight so that all of them as a whole will look good once you pull it out like this. It won't look like bark. I mean, it won't look like just individual pieces. It'll look like actual bark in general. And just keep varying your pieces. Sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they'll go one way. Who cares? Just have fun with it. This is your world. You're making these trees yourself. You can even name it. You can name this one George. And you can make up a story about George. George may be one of those criminals that you just sort of think he's got the right smart idea because he's making 6 figures a year, only working about 10 hours a week, while you're working 40 hours and making diddly squat with mortgages and debt. Starts to make kind of sense, the drug dealing or the crime that he's doing. That's what this guy is, George. That's what he does. This tree. Go like on there. Come on, baby. Catch up with me. It's about a half a click behind. There's a movie that I watched the other day that I haven't seen in about 20 years called Fletch Lives. It's a Chevy Chase movie. It's really good. He is a journalist. He's a paper columnist, like a Jane Doe. And but yet he somehow wanders into being a detective through most of his films. There's 2 of them, Fletch and Fletch Lives. Don't know why they made a sequel, but the actual sequel's pretty good. And he impersonates people, disguises himself, trying to get in and trying to get information so he can blow up his story and get a good lead for the paper. It's really pretty good. I don't like that uniformed. That's kind of uniform there, but oh well. It's fine. Follow me now as we go around the tree. Making bark. Sometimes modeling is really boring, like now. This is a good time to go make a sandwich, because you're probably getting hungry right now. And it's still 7. Yeah, we're going to try to get this thing done, and then make a couple copies for the other part of the tree, and then make the base, get some noise going on for the grass, and then we're done. I've got the printer ready to go. I have never tested it yet. I've not gotten a chance to print it out yet, but it's all hooked up, ready to go. So what I plan on doing is I'm going to try to get some live streaming going of the printer. But I'm not 100% sure that'll be just total pain in the butt to get set up. So no promises. But I'm going to try to get the Dwarven house, or the Gnome house, whichever you want to call it, started printing. And if everything goes right, have that painted sometime in this month. Got a dude, pretty good painter. He's going to paint it, probably, if he has nothing better to do. assuming he's not eating Brussels sprouts. And we'll get some beauty pictures up on the Instagram, social media, that crap. People can look and drool over it and see what they want. Oh my god, this is taking forever. Wish this was quicker. They should have it where you can have a actual brush, not a. See, they need to have it where you have multiple brushes at once instead of just one brush, and it don't have that. So you can adjust the brush to more specific dimensions if you wanted, but this one seems to be fine. Just sucks that I have to do this all over again, because unfortunately this would be fine if it would just take me, if I would do it really quickly, but there's such a delay as I mean, you guys are probably thinking this is lagging, and it looks like and feels like it's lagging. That's how much it's dragging right now, because it's having to deform a bunch of polys as you drag this over. I mean, really, this is kind of an amazing event that this thing can do this, because I mean, this program was not really meant to do this. They just put this in as an afterthought, and it does the trick for what we need. But yeah, for something like this, you really need to have a pretty good processor. The graphics card, as I've said before, all that really does is let you just move around. I mean, it does give you some capability of seeing the scene like this. If you have a good graphics card, the more complex your model is and your scene is, the easier and quicker that thing you'll be able to spin around and move around the scene like this. So without that good graphics card, I've got a 1080, and I just have one of them. But yeah, if you had, 1070 is fine. 970 probably be okay with stuff like this. If you're doing a full scene, probably want more than a 970. There's cheap video cards out there that only have, I don't know, at least 4 gigabytes are the cheapest ones, and you can get ones for 8 gigabytes of video RAM. Something like that, you should have enough, and then just make sure everything else is turned off. You're not running Steam, you're not running iTunes, you're not running a browser, especially not a browser. You'd be surprised how much real estate that takes up. As efficient as it's supposed to be, things like Chrome, they take up a lot more than people realize. So turn off all that and focus just on this, and we'll get through it. Almost done. Just this little section here. We'll even come from over here so we can feel like we're doing something. We're getting closer. We're getting closer. Welcome everybody, by the way. This is quite a number of people that are showing up. I'm really happy to have everybody here, because, we're just modeling, having a good time, seeing what there is to see. For those of you who are new, basically what we're doing is modeling for 3D printing, specifically for, in this case, D&D or tabletop role-playing games. A lot of people are using more and more, they're using colored battle maps to play their games in. They basically is a top-down view of some kind of a environment, and then it has a grid drawn on top of it, a 1-inch grid, and then you use your miniatures to move around and determine where everything's at, and during combat and stuff like that's part of the game. Well, I find that to be lacking in immersion. It really doesn't get me when I see a flat picture. Even if it's drawn really well, it's still a flat image, and then when you put miniatures on it, it just doesn't look very good. So what I'm proposing to do is making these series of 3D models that are made to fit well onto a 1-inch gridded battle map so that it complements the scene rather than, you know, takes over. So basically you'll lay the top battle map down, but then also use these 3D models that sit on top of the drawn trees. So now you actually have trees, but also have the grass and all that's drawn down on the bottom. So you can do both. And I think that it has a lot of potential. We've used stuff like this in the past. I've seen it at conventions. It works really, really well. So basically what we do is we can go in there and tighten up the bark at a later date because that's not near tight enough. There should not be huge gaps like that. But for right now, I'm not going to spend more and more time on that. Save it as a new file real quick. Let's go with a plus sign over here to make it a 15. And we're going to do that because we're going to try to kill our computer. And the way we do that is we're going to add another turbo smooth on top of this. We've got one down here. It's turned on and it has iteration 3, so it's pretty smooth right now, but you can still see plenty of segments here. We're going to make sure that our smoothing group is turned off by selecting poly. And sure enough, there is a smoothing group right there that's turned on. It basically makes an illusion that you think that your model is smoother than it should be. You just turn that bad boy off so that there is no depressions here. Another way we did earlier, I always change my view to facets up here in the upper left hand corner. You just click on it and you can change it. And it basically just gives you different versions of what the model looks like. If you leave it at facets, then it will show you individual polygons and the edges. You'll see all of this because this right here, all of that, that's how it's going to print, ladies and gentlemen. It will print, even though it's smooth like that, you'll see some of the pixelation on that. And I personally don't like that. So that's why I wanted to crank this up to a 4 instead of a 3, because it would be a lot smoother. So brace yourselves. I'm going to click on Turbo Smooth. It's going to add this, and it will automatically Turbo Smooth this one iteration, which would be the equivalent of 4 iterations down here in the Turbo Smooth. It's going to be pretty smooth. This may take a while. Let's see what happens. It actually worked a lot better than I thought. Usually that can kill the computer on that and will crash your system, but fortunately I've got a pretty decent one and it works pretty well. So we can actually turn it off, turn it on. You can see the difference. Yeah. Now if I wanted to go crazy, I can add the iteration, just crank that up. Now, here's the thing. When you export this file, you will export it as an STL file, okay? And it'll be the last thing. Let's make it smooth. All right, we'll do it one more time because it's rough right now. See if we canceled it. Nope. We made it smooth right there. See how smooth that is now? Now, when you export this thing, it's not necessary for you to have the Turbo Smooth on while you're working in the final preparations. When you've got this thing set up, if you want to, you can turn this Turbo Smooth off, knowing that you're done with this tree, because we are. This tree is done. I can go back in and do the more bark if I want to later, but for this purpose, we're done. Okay? And really, when this thing prints off, you probably won't even notice. It'll just kind of be a general looking of bark. So you can turn the Turbo Smooth off, finish up what you're doing, and when you're just about to export it as STL file for a printer, when you're sending it off to the printer, then you turn the Turbo Smooth back on, make it smooth, and it'll be good that way. All right, now let's unhide all, because we've had all kinds of stuff in here. Whoa, we do have all kinds of stuff in here. We've got the original tree that we started out with, which looks like crap. We don't need that anymore, so let's delete that. We've got the Big Papa tree that we did when it was not scaled properly. We're not going to use that anymore because, you know, we're not going to print off that thing because that's about 2.5 feet. Well, Maybe only about 16 inches tall. But that's a heck of a big tree, and we don't want to print it that big. Delete that. We got the dwarf tree right next to it, and that's really only there for reference of scale. This is a big enough tree that has a person living in it, so it's going to be bigger than what it should be. We want the tree to be, on average, the size of the miniature. And what do? We go over to box, cylinder. We just make a little cylinder real quick. And the size of a typical mini is 12.5 radius, or 25 millimeters across, 25 millimeters tall. That's usually the size of a mini. And if we move it up across, right next to it, we can see it's a bit taller than the mini, which is what we want. We want it to be so that you're on this side, theoretically, it's blocking the line of view, which in the game terms, it's important. We do not need this. Now this is where we were going to make our board game. This is going to be the ground that will fit on top of the battle map. Now the battle map itself is going to be much bigger. Let's see, a typical, Pathfinder makes battle maps, and they make these silly, like, strange ones that aren't that big in my opinion. But I'm just looking online real quick for one that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, and it looks about 25 across. So basically what we did here, the last time we made these are 1-inch grids. Even though I've got them in millimeters, they're 1-inch grids. So this is a 4x7. And the idea is that I wanted to make this 4x7 grid to where, don't know why the effect pivot is turned on. That's really weird. I must have pushed a button. We don't want to change the pivot. We want to change the object. Oh, we got a little friend underneath here. What's underneath here? Ah, that's the reject from last week. So yeah, we've got this little, okay, select everything, Alt, select the plane, Alt, select your tree, and then you've got that little ring thing, this little reject thing that we made last week, and it didn't work. Yeah, it wasn't very good. Delete that. We don't need it anymore. Alright, we just need this thing. And after tonight's session, I will flatten this because we can see that it's rounded. Oops. You see how this base is rounded? It's not flat. We flattened it last week, but we can do that later. Right now, I want to make this finished. It's 7:30. So really, what we did was we were going to put this like, right there, and maybe like right there, and so that they fit within the parameters of their respected sizes. In this case, it's a 2x3, this is a 2x2, and here's a 2x3. Each place that they overlap, that's going to count as an entire square because, I mean, you could put a mini right there, and that's fine right here, but it's still overlapping the place, and we count everything like if it's overlapping like that. All of those are essentially part of the tree. So we can move it. We can move it to where it's like that. And that's a little bit better because, I mean, the person placing these things can make it so that, whatever, he can make it possibly over here. But the problem is that it needs to have holes in it. I will have 3 different versions to this, which is ridiculous, but we're going to do 3 different versions. One of them is going to have the peg in the bottom, and that's going to fit into a female end on this placement here when we make it. The other one is going to be 2 female ends. This one, basically, this plug is going to go up into the tree, and then it will be able to have a magnet sunk into it and a magnet sunk into this base. Some people like magnets, and that way it just pops right off. The other one, I'm just going to have one where it just is flat. No peg down here, no hole in the base, and it loosely just sits on the surface. Some people like that as well. And that part will allow them to move this thing around freely. Well, not that thing, but the tree. They can move it around to wherever they want, place it how they want. When it comes with the pegs and the magnets, I will have to predetermine and make holes into this base so that they line up. I can make multiple holes in different areas, and then they can have a decision. So there may be a hole right here, a hole right here, a hole right here, multiple holes, and then they just pick the place they want to put the tree in. But then you're going to have to add a plug so that the person using this can plug the holes that they don't want. Otherwise, you're going to have all these weird holes in the surface, and it just looks bad. So you can add options to this, and that's the nice thing about 3D modeling, is that it doesn't take much to make these alternates, and then you can offer them in different versions under the same file. So when I sell this in the Kickstarter, they'll get all 3 versions: the freestanding one, the male female end, and the 2 female ends. And then they just pick which file they want. They look at the picture and they go, yeah, I want to add magnets in this. All right, I select this file, I print that. Ignore the others because it's not interested. So for right now, we're going to go mail in, and then I can just make them later. Let's make a box, shall we? Because I don't want a flat surface. I want something with depth. Oop, and that's what we did. We dragged that on there. We basically just made a box in the creation panel and just dragged it right across, snapping along the sides of the plane, because the plane's still in there. And I just don't care about the height for now because we can adjust it. Once you make the object, you can just adjust it by going to your modify tab up here. It's the second from the left. And then just adjust the height. And we don't want it too high because, remember, this is coming off the table surface, so we don't want it too high, but 3 millimeters, that's not that far at all. So that's actually not that high off the surface. If you go look at a ruler, you'll see what I'm talking about. 3 millimeters, not much. And what I'd like to do is make it so that it doesn't just come straight up. It's slanted, kind of like a trapezoid, or chamfered, in other words, tapered, so that it has kind of more of a ledge to it. So it's not as artificial. It's more natural. So what we want to do first is change this box to an edible poly. That lets us change pretty much anything we want of this. Select poly. We're going to take the top of this box, and all we're going to do is just scale it. We're just going to bring it in so that it is inside itself. So we use the scale button up here. We haven't used that all night tonight. We're going to use the scale button up here, and we're going to drag right where that yellow triangle is, inward, so that it comes inward like that. Now you'll notice right off the bat that it doesn't do it evenly, and that's fine. We can worry about that later. But the main thing is that we bring that in, and we've got ourselves a nice little table here. Now, for aesthetics, you can do one of 2 things. This is just stuff that you can think about while you're modeling these things. If you're doing this for yourself, if you want to add what's called flock, if you want to put in actual terrain decoration, stuff you get at the hobby store, a lot of terrain model hobbyists will use flock to make trees and grass and things like that, and it's a really big mess, personally. Some people love using it. I can't stand using it. But if you wanted to, you could select this poly again, choose your bevel, click the settings, bring it in again for a little bit of a lip, hit the plus button, turn off, make a 0 your inset that you just did, and that brings it back to where it was, but you still have an inset here, and then drop it down with the height. And you have a little lip, And that will allow you to fill in very nicely the flock or anything that you want. You want to put dirt in there for all I care. You can fill that in with a little bit, and there'll be a lip there, so that you will have a nice flush surface, and it will hold some thickness of your flock, and it'll be a lot easier to inset in there. I don't personally like that. I'm not going to do it because that's not where I'm going, but you can do it just as easily. My thing is, I need to get this thing to both look like a grid, because it's going to fit perfectly on a grid, and I need it to look like grass without it being real grass. Now, here's the problem. I just brought this top piece in here. So if there's an issue right there. There's a little bit of a, if you look real closely, you see right here, that line does not go straight across. That means that we do not have a flat, this line is not perfectly flat across. You can actually see, if I deselect, you don't see it there, but if I highlight it, you sure can. It's right there. See that? There's a little bitty section there. So what we're going to do is turn on vertice, right click your move, and select the move tool up here. That brings up this dimension chart here, and you want to select this and then select that. No, there is absolutely nothing different here. It's this this y coordinate. If you move it down and up like this, it's 51.749. I kind of suspected this to be a little off, but it's not. It may just be an illusion, because to this it looks like it's the same number right there. This number is going to be different because it's on the x-axis, but it's something to check. I know that's boring. Let's get to the fun part. So as I was saying, because we brought this top part in, the outer edge is perfectly 4 inches by 7 inches. We already did that measurement, because if we hit F3, we can actually see the plane underneath it. You see that? That was that plane that we left in there for our dimensions. It is set at 4 by 7. But if we just worried about that top piece on the trapezoid, that comes inward a little bit. So it would not be, these would not be 1 inch, couldn't make 1 inch squares, because there's more to it, this gap here. So what do? Well, we ignore the fact that it's coming in. And what it really matters is that we have the segments cut out across. Now, if you go in there and make this inward piece, if you go in there and make it like drastic like that, then yeah, you're going to have a problem. But if you keep it out there where you're just chamfering just a little bit of it, you can get away with having, these squares are not going to be perfect 1 inch, but they're going to be big enough that you're going to have a piece that can fit on there. This piece might actually hang over the edge, right there, if they were high enough. Let me see here. Let me show you what I'm talking about. They're not. They're inside the thing. But if I set them right on the top of that thing, they would overhang. And that's not really cool. So in that case, you're hoping that you rotate it. And it may not fit. Oh, it's not even centered right. I'm just eyeballing right now, but that's actually the center point. So see how that all overhangs? It's stuff that you got to worry about. If I like rotate it, that's fine there, but then that overhangs a little bit. And that may just be something you have to deal with, because the way I modeled it, there's no real orientation. That may make some people mad. I mean, that's the sad thing, but there's people that are so OCD about things, they don't want it to be overhanging. They want to be perfect. And I'm like that. I'm kind of in the way that I want it to all fit nice and even, but some people, you just can't deal with it. So if you move it to like right there, that's perfect. That'll do it. But this overhangs a little bit, and you just have to say, well, that's okay, because right there is good enough. So now we've got this. Let's make these bad boys Oops. Let's make these bad boys roughly on top. We'll flatten that out later. So what we need to do is go back to this, hit F3, hit T. And we need to select just these 4 right here because we're going to make these segments right here that go on the, we're using the grid, that plane below it, as our guide. So we need to go to connect. We need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These 6 blue vertical bars. We got 6. Now you notice that you can actually see that it makes a loop around to the bottom of this trapezoid. We don't have to worry about that section because that's not going to be visible. It's going to be on the bottom. But you do notice that it's off-centered. This can be prevented by doing one at a time and then moving over to one side and then hitting your planer button over here, your X button, and that flattens it out. You can actually see it's flattened. It's nice and vertical now. You can do that, but I'm going to go back. I want all 6 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I am going to, oops, go back to what we were doing, connect. And I'm going to deselect everything except one of them. And I'm going to go through each one, selecting and deselecting around it. Alt to deselect, X. Now if I do multiple ones of this and deselect all that, it converts onto itself like that. So that's why you got to do it one at a time. But it's not that big a deal because we've got just a couple of them, and it's not that big a deal. Now we've got that one done. Now we need to do the other side, this kind, and we need to do connect. And we don't want 3 this time. We need just, or 6 this time. We just need 1, 2, 3. We just need 3 of them, which is why we put 3 down there, because we're doing a 4 by 7. And the nice thing is this one is completely split, so, or nice and even. So now all we just need to do is these 2. Instead of an X, it's going to be a Y because it's going from top. This yellow, this Y, it's going to go this way. X is this way. Y is up and down in this top view. And Y on that one. Now, if we hit F3, we've got our grid. And it's nice and even. And we know it's a 1-inch grid, so we're good to go there. Now we actually have to make the grid. Make them so it's actually good. Because if we hit F4, that grid disappears. The only reason why we can see the grid is because I've got wireframed turned on. So it shows us the edges of those segments. But without them, it's nothing. So, for that regard, we're going to make little slits where those are. An easy way to do it, go to your top view. You can, I'm just going to select everything. And I'm just going to deselect just the edges. I want to keep the cross sections. And I mean all of them, including the bottom. It can work that too. That's fine. Well, actually, no, you don't want that because we're going to be editing in there. So, at this point, I would probably just ignore the size. As nice as those is, and I'll show you what I mean later. We're going to make these lines split apart. So instead of one line, you'll have 2 lines on either side, and then we're going to bring that line down so it's a little trough, like a little V section. And we don't want the sides because this side is going to be a nice little, excuse me, nice little flat edge there that kind of gives it a little more solidity. So we needed to get it to where it's just the top part, like this, selected. Extrude is going to be your tool this time. You went to settings this time, so the right box. Automatically starts at 0, 0 unless you've used this before, and then it'll be whatever the setting was last time. So we need to increase the size, not by much. but just by enough that we can actually see that there's a gap. And you can see that there's a gap everywhere, and you can see what it did to the side there. Now, if we had extended it down here, it would have had the same split, but then it would have had this little V section underneath. And you can do that if you want to. It kind of hides out all the lines, but I just want the top. That's all that matters. And now you take the top one, the height, and you go down with it. And I'm just going to go down a little bit because it really doesn't need to go down that far. Oops. About like that. And then click on OK. Deselect. And if you hit F, then you've got yourself a nice little groove. Now, some people will say when it comes to printing, you don't want anything smaller than 0.2 millimeters on anything for detail-wise, because the nozzle is incapable of getting that small of a print because it's printing out plastic. Depending on the size of your nozzle and how much plastic's coming out, it depends on how much detail you can get in there. Some printers can get really, really small. I've got it 0.1 millimeters coming down. That's not very deep, but it's deep enough that they'll easily see that, because I can see it right now just by looking up at it. That's a grid right there. So that will sit right down on our battle map. So if you had a full battle map, turn off G, and let's say this battle map was this big, we'll crank the sizes down. So let's pretend that I nailed it right on the money and this is a 1-inch grid map. You just laid this thing on the ground, and let's say that this image here is a top-down view of a forest. Then, assuming, turn this on, pretend like it has not only the top-down view, but it has a grid on it. You then take this piece that you printed out with all your forest pieces, and you set it right on there, and assuming that you've got a 1-inch grid, it will fit perfectly on that map. And all of a sudden, instead of just having a top-down view of a forest, you've got a piece over there that's a little cluster, and you can first add more pieces to it. You can rotate these things so that they're in different spots, so it's a little bit broken up. And we'll change the trees when I finally print them off. I'll change them a little bit so they have a little bit of discrepancy on it. And then you can take this whole thing, assuming you print it out a couple times, and you can move it over. You can move it right here. You can move it over here. You can move it here. You can rotate it so that it's 90 degrees and it sits right here. And now all of a sudden you've got your battle map that is painted down below of your forest, your top view. But then as you're sitting there at the table, you've got all these trees that you are able to manipulate. You can move these things. If you wanted to stand in that spot, you just remove that tree. And now the piece can fit in there. You don't even need to have this base. I'm just going to provide the base for easier access. But you can go in there and just print off the version of tree that does not have this little male end sticking out of the bottom. You can get the freestanding version of it. So it'll just be, as you see here, just this freestanding tree. You can eliminate this and just have the tree sitting on your battle map wherever you want. If your trees looking down are drawn over here, well, then you just put a whole bunch of trees over here, and you can just cluster them up. I make a couple of different trees, and then you've got your cluster over there. Now all of a sudden your battle map has depth to it. It has dimension. It's not just the flat battle map anymore. And you don't have to go in and have all this massive amounts of foam that you've made terrain that takes up all your space. These trees can take up less space, can be stored away in boxes because they're just going to be terrain pieces, just like the pieces that we're going to be making the dwarf tree that I showed earlier. Well, I mean, that can go over in one corner. There's going to be like a ring of mushrooms that can go right here. All of that can go into a simple box, and you can shove it in your closet, and it's gone, and it compacts a lot easier. And then this battle map rolls up, and you're done. So it's easier for you to take these with you to your friend's house. It's easier for you to store away. If you're going to a convention, it's ideal because all of this goes into one Tupperware rather than 15 different ones. And bringing it all in there so that you can go in and actually bring just the pieces you need. And then, of course, if you are really inclined, one of the pieces I'm making is a campfire set. So you can even make it crazier and make this little camp light. When you print off the campfire, it's going to have its feature that you go get one of those those little tea lights, and you put it in the middle of that campfire, so you actually have a flickering light. You can get those tea lights to flicker. It's very easy. And you put it in the middle. Now, how cool is it when you're sitting here playing your game, and then right there is an actual illuminated flickering light inside your campfire, and you see all of the shadows. You could even dim your lights in your room if you're playing at your friend's house. It's campfire night, it's evening. You dim the lights, play just by the light of these tea lights, and now all of a sudden you've got shadows cast heavy on these trees, and you can actually, as a DM, put stuff behind here, and depending on how dark your room is, you can actually hide the minis from your players, and they don't even, they're sitting over here. They can't see anything because it blocks the view. So when you come in here, you can actually really add dynamic value to this just by adding a simple amount of trees. You don't have to make your own trees like the miniature railroad people do, where you have flock, because that, believe me, as much as you can do good with making flock, eventually that flock is going to start flocking off, and you're going to have a mess. It's tough to store. They don't have long shelf life. Eventually, you'll have all the mess laying on the ground. These are nice solid pieces. They go with the minis. It's pretty easy that way. So that's basically it. We don't have to go back here and take out these and take out that. We don't need any of these because we're only just making one. So in this regard, I'm going to hide this one real quick, and then with the last little bit we have left, I am going to tighten this up a little bit so that it is hopefully going to stay nice and clean. And boy, that's going to take a little bit of extra edges. There's going to have to be one right there for starters. Drop down to 1. And we need it right up at this edge because I want it nice and sharp right there. I want that edge right there, nice and clean. And we can push square on that one. Now we need it to do the other side, this way and this way. Do the same thing, connect. And it automatically comes to the edge because we already had it set, so the settings remain the same. So that actually should stay pretty strong on the top, but let's test it anyway. Yeah, I mean, it for the most part, it stays fairly consistent right there. It could use a little bit sharper edges, and that comes from the side. There's a line up here, but there's not a line down here. So what you do there is you just go in here and select that and your other side, because you want this side to go up. And really, actually, you might as well just push the L button and do everything. Just select all this, because you need the edge to be up here all the way around it. So just select all those side edges. You need one down there too, so you might as well change to 2 edges. zero that out so you have 2 segments, and then use the middle one and separate it all the way to both edges so it's nice and tight like that. I should have probably tightened this one up a little bit more, but that's okay. See, now it's a little bit tighter. That's okay. That's good enough. You'll have to go in there and actually tighten up all of these too, because if you don't, the Turbo Smooth will actually darn near flatten that out. See how flat they made that out? It's because they don't have any, it pulls this edge. So it smooths it out more. So you'd have to go in there, and I'll have to go in and make a segment all the way down on this side, all the way down on this side, do the same thing, do the same thing. And that could have been probably done earlier before I did the extrusion. But, you know, I'm doing it one step at a time and just the way it's coming to me. So once you tighten all that up, let's assume that it's where we want. Let's pretend for a second, because we're running out of time here. Let's pretend that once we make this high definition, we want to make the grass. The grass is pretty simple. We're going to do more definition. So add another head of poly with your Turbo Smooth on. Do your poly selection so that you're going to be deforming, just like we did with the brushes, or the bark, if I can say it right. But we're going to make it a lot smaller. So we're going to go turn on the push, and we're going to make everything like 111. Oh, well, not that much. 2. So it's not going to come out very hard. See how small my brush is? Now if I push it, it should come out. And if we turn off the line, we can actually see it's not coming up quite as much, and it's a little too big still. So we're going to make it 0.5, and then we're going to make it other way around, 7.5. Yeah, there we go. Now that's a little bit more. And then you just go around, and this is where you need to have a lot of polys. And right now I can see that I don't have enough, because what you're wanting to do is you're wanting to bump up things, but you need to keep it so that everything is even. There's no like big gaps between the two. See how there's like a gap right there? You want to make sure that it's extra tight all the way around, because the thing is going to, the piece is going to sit on this thing. So an object is going to sit down on this, and it's going to be the whole, it's going to be this big, which means that it needs to have enough flat edges right around, like if you look at from the side angle. All of this, if you made an imaginary line straight across, that's where the piece is going to be sitting on. So you need to have enough of those peaks right here, enough of them across, that the piece stays flat anywhere you want to sit it on. And then, of course, we're going to have to cut a hole right here, and that's where the trees will go into. So the pieces can actually sit on the actual, this is where the grid will be, like you can see. Let me turn off Edge Smooth. The pieces are going to sit right here, and they take up the entire square, but the trees are going to have to go in between in the quads. So they'll have a hole right here, and then the piece can be right there, so you can just pop the tree off and put the person on there. So that pretty much wraps this thing up. All I have to do is go in here and cut some holes into this circle. It basically amounts to, sorry about that, basically amounts to better preparation on this base. And I just wanted to start off with it just so you can actually see it, because this is going to be done by before you come back on Wednesday. Final preparation will be me putting all the grass in, popping that thing up, putting a mesh smooth on, a Turbo Smooth, so it's nice and rigid, and make these circles. And I'm going to probably put one here, and one there. So I'll probably have one that's spaced in between these two, and then maybe one right there. I'm going to space it out and give them enough holes that they can pick and choose. And then this will be one piece. And so they can just put their tree in whatever hole they want. You can't satisfy everybody. So I can't go in there and put a hole everywhere because it's impossible. It's impractical. So you're going to try to make it as flexible as you can for everybody else, and then hope that they can make do with what you got. And we can give them some options too. So if they just don't like anything, they can just take the freestanding tree without the peg and just set it on their battle map, and that's how it is. And then that's good enough. So, all right. So when Wednesday comes, this will be done. I'll go ahead and give you a tour of showing you what it looks like. We'll run through it one more time just to show exactly how it finalizes. I will export this as a STL file. I'll show you how to do it. It's very simple. We will open up what is called a slicer tool, and it is essentially the program that you bring your STL file in to prepare for the printing. And it will show you where the supports go, any errors that might happen, any problems that it could actually foresee before it prints that you can fix. And we'll see just how well we modeled this on the first shot. Once we do that, we'll move on to the next project, which is going to be a wishing well. So that'll be pretty cool. It will be highly detailed with every single stone and various different heights and segments. It'll be a cylindrical wishing well with a little wooden house roof on top, and we'll navigate through some issues because there's some horizontal pieces in there that will not be easy for printing. So I will show a few tricks that we can get around that so that it doesn't have that horizontal, because you can remember a well has a cross beam where the rope is attached to that draws the bucket up, and then also the roof itself is horizontal. And as we remember, 90-degree turns do not work well with printers. They don't like sticking up there without shoving a whole bunch of supports underneath it because it doesn't like overhang. So we'll deal with that that Wednesday. So plan on that. We'll start working on that. But consider this pretty much done. I'll do a few more pieces here, probably either tonight or tomorrow, off camera, because there's more tedious stuff to it, and I don't want to go through that. I want to get through and get on with it. So I will let you guys go. I appreciate all of you each week. You guys, everybody shows up, and some of you even stick around for the whole 2 hours. I don't know how. That's pretty impressive. I'm relieved that hopefully you're not falling asleep or you're having a great time sleeping right now. It may be. But anyway, this is just a lot of fun to do, and I hope that you're having a good time just sitting along, and by all means ask questions in the future or troll me if you want to. Just have all kinds of fun with it. I'm game. So we will be broadcasting Wednesday as usual, 6:00 p.m. Central Standard Time. Until then, this is your old pal, me, signing off. Have a good night.